Hey students, this is Dr. Zen. I'm sorry for part of the recording about cryptography as well as symmetric cryptography got cut off for no reasons. So I'm actually using something called Google Hangout. This is a new tool. It had been out for several years, but this is the first time I ever tried to play with it. So it seems it's an easy open source free tool associated with the company Google, allow us to do screencasting as well, maybe real-time lecture, those kind of things. I may test it out in future classes, especially relate to online students. But for now, I just use that to record my screen, and you should be able to see the screen relate to my PowerPoint slides, and I'm going to finish that segment of the presentation so you don't lose any part of the knowledge. And this is actually a continued on from the previous discussion on the basic concepts of privacy and security, as well as some of the concepts related to the regulations, aka HIPAA, as well as the high-tech regulation related to protection of patients' data and information. So the focus of this segment is on the technology part. And a lot of us, probably heard the term hacking, cracking. Those are part of a bigger, fancy computer science term called cryptography, which basically is you come up with something encrypt and you come up with something try to decrypt it without knowing some of the information. Let me advance the slides. So basically, cryptography and the cryptanalysis are the two terms together comprise the term cryptology, which is the science study cryptography and cryptanalysis. So cryptography is come up with a mechanism allow you to encrypt your file as well as decrypt your file for sharing a file in a secure way. And the cryptanalysis is a way of figure out how to decrypt a file without knowing some of the key information. And in the two examples we're going to use in this class, symmetric and asymmetric encryption, the key information is actually the mathematical key incorporated into the overall encryption. So what is cryptography? Cryptography, as I said before, it's really just the encryption and the decryption. Encryption is you have a plain text, you encrypt to make it uncipherable, then later on when someone who's supposed to read the message, they were able to decipher it, then be able to read it. So one example I want to use here is a movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's actually a movie made in the 70s. Was a lot of prediction about the human being in the future, especially space traveling. And some have become true, some have become not on the target. So actually on that spaceship, there's a supercomputer called HAL 9000. So a lot of people say, well, what is HAL? It's actually, a speculation is it actually a nickname or a hidden name for an existing company. So what is the existing company? So if you read the term or the three-letter word, you'll say, well, what's the pattern here? So the pattern is, let me start the presentation. So the pattern is it's actually IBM. I hope you can read this. Then, so encryption is basically you have plain text. You come up with an algorithm using some keys. Keys is nothing fancy. It's basically a number. Sometimes a large prime number. Sometimes it's just a regular number. and make your plaintext become a ciphertext. Okay, so in this case, it's IBM. The key we use is 1. We just want them to shift to one position of each letter. The algorithm is the same. We want them to shift to one position back in alphabetical orders. So IBM become HAL. So HAL is the ciphertext. IBM is the plaintext, and the key we use is 1. The algorithm we use is to shift the letter back by 1 in the order of alphabets. So if you wanted to decrypt that, you ought to know, well, I need to shift to one position. You also need to know what's the algorithm is. Okay, so I know it's shifted back. So for me to decipher it, I needed to shift to forward one position. So when you decrypt it, the ciphertext become IBM by shifting one position forward. So one related concept is called symmetric cryptography. Basically, the example I show you is a symmetric cryptography because we all use the same key for both decryption and encryption. So there's some other examples, not just shifting positions. You can also substitution. You can have a pre-existing table, just point out which letter is going to substitute which one. So in this case, it's A is replaced by Z. So reversely, you replace letter by the letter at the corresponding position. So the substitution in this example is A is replaced by Z, B is replaced by Y. So you just reverse the alphabets, allow them to have a one-to-one relationship. And you can also do transposition. Transposition is to make a row become column, make a column become row. So in this way, if you write out Mary had a little lamb, instead of horizontally, you write them out vertically. And actually, when you record a message, you record them horizontally. So when you read a message, it's kind of harder to read, harder to understand what the meaning of that. But once you know the algorithm and what's the position it's shifting, it's easy actually for you to see the original plaintext. So basically, this one is an illustration of symmetric encryption. You have plaintext, you use the same key to encrypt to become a ciphertext. And on the other hand, on the other way, you just use the same key again and use the algorithm to decipher it. It's basically reverse the operation. So I'm not sure how many of you ever watch some of the Sherlock Holmes TV shows or movies. There's so many different versions of TV shows and movie about the famous Sherlock Holmes, the detective in England. There's one story called The Adventure of the Dancing Man. Basically, it's an example of symmetric encryption. What it does is it finds out all those little symbols of the dancing man representing different alphabets in the English language. The issue here is if you use this kind of a one-to-one relationship, the issue here is because the English language, the distribution of the letters, they're not actually linear, or they're not actually uniform. What I mean is some letters appear more often than some other letters. For example, letter Z probably is less frequent than letter E, or those vowels, or some letter S. So here is a distribution of all the letters appeared in English in the text. So you can see Z, X, Q, J, they actually appear less frequently than letters like E. So E is the most frequent letters appear in the English language. And you have things like T, S, those also high, the second highest, second frequent letters appear in English language. So in the story, actually, the one of the roles, actually, the victim's name is Elsie. So in her name, there are two E's. So that's how it can be used as a pattern to decipher the message and be able to find the criminals at the end. So another famous machine you probably all heard of is Enigma machine used in the Second World War. It's a very complicated machine, but even with that complexity, it is still a symmetric encryption machine. And I have a link on the website. It's actually show you how the encryption and the decryption works on the Enigma machine. So at that time, people think it's unbreakable, but there is a British mathematician, which actually is the founding father of modern computer science. Alan Turing was able to come up with calculations and algorithm. Actually, he has access to some supercomputing powers, be able to actually decipher the code and break the code and help the help beat the Nazi Germany. So there's a latest movie come out, the Imitation Game. I haven't been able to watch that movie yet. It's just come out on Redbox. So you might be, if you're interested in this kind of topic, you might want to get a DVD and look at his life and also how he cracked the code. And it's interesting. And in the quiz, actually, there is a quiz question about how to use the Enigma machine to encrypt and decrypt the message. So here, how do you do that in on a computer? So you have a, so here's example. So just a margin, there is a encryption standards. There is an encryption standard called data encryption standard. There is a software package or program called DES. You can just run that program to encrypt or decrypt the message. So in this case, I use the program DES, and I use -e, say I want to encrypt. E stands for encryption. Don't worry about the software. I just use that as an example. So everything in between the quotation mark, that's the plain text I want to encrypt. And then the last variable I have, or parameter I have, is output.des, which means I wanted to be able to create a ciphertext based on this. Then I enter the key called, say, well, it will ask me, say, what's your key? I just enter the key, say, OUS key EY. Then it will ask me to enter the key again, just in case I may type the key wrong. So I type in again. So what it does is just encrypt the message. So this is apparently an old Unix system. So KAT stands for, KAT allows you to view any text or any files you want to view. So I will say I want to view this file, output.des. Well, what do you have? Well, we got a rubbish text. You don't even know what those are, some of the symbols. So you really cannot, without decryption, you can't read the output. Then the next one is how do I decrypt the file based on the algorithm. So I use the same software. I use -d to stand for decryption. So I need to decrypt my file. So the ciphertext is in output.des. Remember that? We did that in the previous slides. Then the plain text, I call that text.des, okay? So then when I record it, I needed to use the same key. It will ask me the same key. But then I say I want a cat text.des. You can see the original text appear here in the output. So text.des is the output of the decryption. So if you use a corrupt key, if you use a wrong key, you can see here I use a wrong key, try to decrypt the file. Again, it says corrupt the file or wrong key. If I look at the text.des, it gives me rubbish again. So you want to say how safe for the symmetric encryption? It's really based on the strength of the key and also based on how strong the computer is. So a lot of people, you can guess the key if it's a strong, if it's a strong key, with a lot different possibility. You use all those computers to crack a key. Usually, it will take you a long time to decipher it or decrypt it. If you use the brute force, when I say brute force, is to guess all the combination, or every combination of letters um, uh, using a computer. So in this case, if the key's length has a 56-bit key, so which means the chance you're going to have that 2 to the power of 56 different keys. So if you have a computer can run 1 billion keys per second, it will still take them 834 days to run. So it's almost 3 years for them to find out what the right key is. But if you use English words, what happened is, because there's just that many English words in the dictionary, it's actually will make it much shorter. So it's about 3 months. So it's important for us to change our password frequently, and also it's also important for us to use more combinations. So other than use regular English words, as well as use symbols and spaces, those kind of thing, to representing passwords. So it's the same thing like passwords. You need to change often. You need to use small combinations. So it's basically symmetric encryption is quite safe, and a lot of safety really depends on the key length. So when next time you read something about symmetric encryption algorithm, you want to look at what the software use and what's the key length they use. So there's some issues related to symmetric encryption. It can get resolved, get solved in the asymmetric encryption. The one issue is because you use the same key. So if you have a message, you want to send it to a third party live far away. So how do you deliver the key to them? Because you don't want to lose your key or have someone interrupt the key or even capture the key. Because once your key is lost, your message is totally vulnerable, even because all the algorithm is just out there. Everyone knows what the algorithm is. The strength is decided by the key's length, as well as no one knows the key. And on the other hand, if you communicate with many other people, you need to create a key for every communication. So that's a lot of keys to create. If let's say your website, you have millions of visitors. So every time you need to have a unique key with everyone visiting your website. Otherwise, you don't want everyone knows the same key. Then people can, decipher all the messages between you and others. So there's some issues related to symmetric encryption. It's used to encrypt our files and those kind of things, but it has because of limitations. So it's not a algorithm, or it's not a mechanism used for online communication, because in online communication you communicate with many people, as well as the two parties usually live far away from each other. I'm going to stop here. So the next segment will continue on to discuss asymmetric encryption.